programming logic and how to think logically while working with different data structures and data structures in C Sharp. Okay, so it was mostly just like a general course that focused mostly on just data structures and a few problems. So if you had any problem at that course, if you are still trying to like learn a little of stuff that you are or you were struggling with, okay, that's won't affect your knowledge in this course. Okay, so the new course is almost totally new and totally independent of the previous one. Okay, so think about, okay, I'm starting over. Okay, I will try to catch up what I didn't fully understand in the previous course myself. Okay, so the important thing is just don't think that the previous course will affect this one. Okay, especially if you still have some issues from the previous course, or if you still don't think you are totally okay with stacks or dictionaries. Okay, now this is a new one that's like many people start with this course. Okay, and they don't study programming logic or algorithms or data structures, which of course is very important to study, but it's not mandatory. Okay, so think about, I'm starting over today, I'm starting a new course, I will attend every day, and I'll, to, I'll try to do my best. Okay, things like this. And hopefully it's not too late. Okay, now the most dangerous thing is when it's too late. That means we are just moving, we are just studying new things every day, we are just getting new labs while you are still 2 3 classes like away from us. That's the very dangerous thing, because soon it just gets like it just expands more and more. Okay, and soon you won't be able to catch up. So please don't be in this situation, as the help that I can offer after that time is very minimum. Okay, like we can't review 2 weeks worth of classes if you are just like totally disconnected or something. Okay, so now it's a new chance. Okay, and now it's your chance to start over, to focus more. If you have any questions, you can ask here. You can learn and study more during labs. You can take advantage of having me and Zach together. Okay, of course, and your best resource is Google. You can search whatever you want there. Okay, the main idea or the main goal of the back end is to make you search for stuff. Okay, because that's what you're going to do tomorrow, and that's what you uh, will be doing like every day. Every day at work, you will be searching for new things that you've never heard of. Okay, so if you can start getting used to it now, that would be like that will make your life extremely easier once you start your work. Okay, so um, today we'll start with object-oriented programming in C Sharp, and it's like um, the basic foundation for almost all the courses that's coming later. So later in every, like I think in almost every class, okay, except some database classes, almost in every class we will be using what we will learn in this course, like creating classes, creating objects. Okay, yeah, working with functions, working with properties, working with OOB fundamentals. We will be using what we will learn now in almost every single class. Okay, so if you are not totally okay now, if you don't know what we're doing now, you will be struggling for the rest of the course. So please pay attention. Okay, and the good thing that it's somehow similar to OOP in JavaScript. Okay, so that helps. But anyways, C Sharp is a pure object-oriented programming language. By pure, we mean everything is an object and everything is in a class. Of course, everything except like very simple or like very special things, okay, that we don't care about. But we need to think about everything that's inside a class and everything as an object. So when you look at our class program in any console application, you will notice that nothing is before the class. Okay, like everything is inside a class. Okay, namespace, of course, is just a logical grouping of classes that we will talk about later. But everything is inside a class, and later everything will be an object that we created inside a class. Okay, so it's a pure object oriented language. So the main two things in any object oriented language are class and object. So can anyone tell me what's the difference from what you've learned already? What's the difference between a class and an object?
Object is instance of class.
Mhm. Yeah, so objects are,
Class is something as constructor.
yeah. So, so we can say that, like Millie, what Millie said, that objects are instances of this class. So the class is the abstract thing. Okay. So when I tell you, I have a class called car. Okay. So it it's like I'm telling you I have like a kind of something. Okay. Or I have a species that's its cars. Okay. In this class, okay, or in this abstract thing, you have wheels and you can drive around. Okay. But I'm talking about a general concept. I can tell you, like, usually there is an engine, you can start the engine. So I'm describing like an abstract thing, okay, that like has lots of features and lots of shared things between all the things that looks like cars. But when I tell you I have a Mazda 2015, okay, I have a Mazda 6, or I have a RAV4 2010. Okay, now I'm talking about a specific object. Okay, now I'm talking about an object from this general concept that called cars. Okay, so the class is a definition of a set of related properties and functions. Okay, so I tell you, like, I have a class car. It has some properties like uh, the make, the year, uh, um, the the type of the trim. Okay, and now when I want to talk about a specific instance of this class, okay, that's when I create an object. Okay, so for example, of course, class program is the class that we use for our actual code that will run the program. But of course, we always create our classes outside class program. Now, the problem is that we have something called nested classes. You can create a class inside a class, okay? And it will work, but it has a totally different meaning that we don't want now. Okay, so be careful when you are creating a class, because soon there are stuff that they are supposed to work a certain way and they are not working. Okay, so be careful that don't create a class in a class now. Okay, it happens all the time, and you won't notice that this class is inside another class. Okay. So suppose someone is trying to invent cars now. Okay, like we don't know anything about cars yet, and someone is trying to invent cars. So this guy will say, okay, I have something called a car. Okay, so he's describing a set of shared properties and shared functions. So he will say, or she will say, this guy who is inventing cars, they will say, okay, I have something called string, for example, make. Okay, so what make? Is it Toyota? Is it Mazda? Is it Honda? Okay, I have something like int year. Okay, what year it was made. I have something like string color. Okay, so every property, those are what we call properties or fields. Okay, so the properties, like as a person, what are your properties? Like your weight, your height, your um, I know your nationality maybe. Okay, and you have the functions, the behaviors, okay, that you can do, or the behaviors that define your actions. For example, if we are talking about the car, so we have a function called void start engine. Okay, of course, here you should write code to start the engine. We have something like void stop engine. We have a behavior, for example, to honk. Okay, just press the honk and beep beep sound. Okay, sounding the horn or whatever. Okay, so in a very basic like definition, the class will just describe the different things you have for a type. Okay, so it describes a certain type in terms of what properties this type. So for example, suppose I have a class person. Okay, so I have some properties. Okay, like width, height, nationality, like skin color, whatever. Okay, and also I have behaviors. So in a person, I have walk, sleep, study. Okay, so the things that describes you and the things that you do, okay, in that class or in that type. Now, when you want to make an actual, so for example, we know what cars are supposed to look like. We know what are the what is the description of this type that we call a car. Now we want to create an actual car. Okay. Now, for example, um, a factory called Toyota, they said, okay, we want to start making cars. Okay. So each actual car they make and that you can drive, that's an object of the class or the type car. Okay. So it's very important to distinguish between the object, okay, the actual thing from the class, which is just the definition of the type. Okay. So is it clear what's the difference between object and car? So to create an object in C# we use the word new. So here in program, you can say car, okay? And first you specify what is the type of that class. It's just like when I create, so when I create a variable in C#, I say the type first. So int x, okay, then I give it a name equal. Here I don't need to say new integer, although I can, but this is called a primitive type. So primitive types, you can just create them without the need of creating an object. But when you want to create something from class car, you need to create like an object with the word or the keyword new. So first the type, then give your variable any name. Okay, so like uh, my Honda. Okay, this is the name of my car. Okay, equals. So here you need to use the keyword new to create an object. So it's like a factory that's creating cars for you, actual objects of the type car. So it's a new car, okay? And here is the constructor, and that's what we will talk about in this today actually. Okay, so now I have an actual object, an actual car from my class or my type that's called car. Of course, you can't use the class name again. Okay, that's not permitted, like car. Okay, so just try to use any other name, otherwise you will be extremely confused. And now you can start calling the functions or start to set the properties. So you can say my Honda dot. So now you will see that you can't access anything because nothing here is public. So also in today's class, we will talk about the access modifiers. But for now, let's make everything public. Okay. Once you make everything public, now you can access everything. So you can set the make equals, for example, Honda. My Honda dot year is 2010. Yeah, that's the one I bought. Sorry, it's integer. Then I can say something like my Honda dot start engine. Okay. So this function doesn't do anything. So let's just like okay, car engine is starting or something like this. So when you call start engine, the code here will be executed. So let's try to start it. Okay. You can use the properties inside the functions. And of course, this is why you create them. So the car 0, then 1. So here I want to include the year and the make inside the start engine. Okay, so of course this is formatting a string. Okay, so instead of the 0, we will replace the year, whatever the year is. Instead of 1, we'll replace the make. So it will look like this. Sorry, are you asking?
Yeah, yeah. I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So I didn't understand how did you like create the object, like the syntax of the object.
Okay, let's make another object then.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So to create an object, like first you need a class to create objects from. Okay, so we created the class car. Okay, now let's create another car. So say car. Okay, give it a name. Okay, you can call it just car, or you can give it like try to give it a name of this car that you are making that will describe it later. Okay, so let me call this one 2020 um, Mazda. Okay, okay, but of course it's just a name. You can sorry, you can start with equals new car. So that's how we created an object. Okay, now I created a new car. Okay, just what is the class, what is the name of the object, okay, you are creating. Just like, do you remember when we created arrays, when we created hash set, we were giving them names. Okay, when we create a car, you need to give it a name. Then a new car, this is how you actually create this object. So this whole line is how you create an object.
Okay, which means like if you want to create a object, you're gonna have a class of that object
Of course,
first, right?
otherwise you can create objects from a class that you don't have.
Oh, okay. So
Okay?
so you cannot create a like just a simple object like without any class.
No, if like you can't create an object from a class that doesn't exist.
Oh,
So now,
okay.
for example, like there are some, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of classes that are already in the language, but someone created a class for them. So, like there's a class called list. Okay, so I can create a list. Okay, here, but if you went here, just right click on the list, go to definition. Okay, so you will see someone created something called class list. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to create an object from list. Okay, so do you remember the list that we used in the previous course? We were able to create objects because someone else inside this .NET framework, okay, and we can access them. Someone else created the class. Okay, so after you create an object, now you can control its properties and its behaviors. So for this car, okay, 2020 Mazda dot, now just by the dot, you can access all the accessible properties and functions. Of course, some of them are private, you can't access them. Okay, the make is okay. So when I say like 2020 Mazda or my Honda or whatever, try to imagine an actual car. Okay, try to imagine your car. Okay, that's your car is an object of the class cars. Okay, your car has all the properties of cars, right? It has a make, a year, a color. You can start the engine, you can stop the engine. So it follows everything inside our class car. Okay, so my Mazda dot year, for example, is 2020. You can leave some of the properties without a value. Okay, if you don't need them now, or if someone else. So I will not set the color, for example, or let's set for this one. And now I can invoke a function, okay, a behavior. So let's start the engine of my this car. Okay, so notice that each object, each car has its own properties and its own functions, right? So like Soleil has a Honda, okay, and he has his own start engine. So when Soleil starts his engine, does this start my car's engine? Yeah, it won't affect. So when he calls my Honda to start engine, this won't affect anything in the other Mazda in the next street, right? So here, every object has his own set. Like when you change the color of your car, does this change the color of someone else's car? Okay, it won't, because each one is a different object. So they share the same things in class car, but each one has his own copy of those properties and behaviors. Okay, each car or each object has its own independent color and make and year. Okay, that like when you change the year here, you are not changing for every car, every other car, or when you are changing the color. Okay, so now when you start the engine of your Mazda, this will only start the engine for your Mazda, for your object. So now I have two cars, each one is starting its engine. So see this line, uh, see this line. Okay. So let's try to create a third car and try to implement some code in the stop engine as well. Okay, so let's create another car, change the properties, start the engine, stop the engine. Write some code in stop engine. Yeah, let's do it. You do it, please. I'll be back in a minute, please. Okay, so let's create it together. Okay, this is our third car. Okay, it's just called car equals is a new car. Okay, so we will talk tomorrow what's the difference when you just say car and name and stop, and when you say new car. We will talk about what is the difference between this and this. But let's just go slowly so we can understand everything just without going into too much detail already. So this car dot make equals, okay, this one is Toyota. Toyota, okay, hope this is correct. And year is, okay, this is a pretty old one, 1980. Okay, and let's start engine right away. Okay, so let's,
Sorry,
sorry,
can I see the class again very
yeah,
quickly?
I will go back to the class. Yeah, and I will try to implement the stop engine. So here, like in stop engine, of course, like in a car, stop engine is a very extremely like a detailed thing with lots of like I know, I'm not sure what they do honestly, but it's a very big thing. Okay, it's not a line. Okay, so you can imagine how complicated this thing will be in real life. But we are just creating like an imaginary car that has those simple things. Okay, let's just take this one. Okay, here we can say beep beep. Okay, so now, for example, the people who are working with this class car, they told me, okay, we need to add the the model, sorry, to the car. So now, for example, Toyota or Mazda, they are making so many different cars. It's not only Toyota. So it's Toyota RAV4, okay, or Toyota Highlander, okay, or for example, if we are talking about American cars, so it's like I know you have Chevrolet, for example, Chevrolet Cruze. Okay, so they want now another property, not function, that's called the model. Okay, so what is the model of these cars? Okay, can you add a model to this class? So first, what type of the model? Okay, what type? Is it a string? Is it an integer?
String.
Yeah, string would be enough. Okay, for us now. Of course, we will learn how to make better types like in next classes. But for now, it's string should be enough. So how would you add a new property or a new field to this class?
Just write another public string beneath
Yeah.
color.
So it's just as easy as this. So public string, this one, now we call it a model. And you will notice that we didn't affect those guys. So the model for those guys, those cars that we already created, it will be empty string or the default string, which is null. Okay. The default value of string is null. So like this car or this one or this one. For example, let's add for this Mazda, for example. So the, this Mazda, we can now change the model of it equals like they have one called Mazda 6 or CX-5. Okay, that's the model of this car. And of course, you can change the model of every car. Okay, so you can add more properties, you can add more functions as you are learning more about this type. So first, you can start by a simple class, simple functions, but the more you learn about this type, the more details you can add to this class. Okay? So far, is there any question? So what we did here, we created a class, we created an object, we learned what's the difference. We have few properties and few functions. Okay, we are calling them from another class. So imagine this is the concept of a car, and here this is where we are actually making actual cars. Okay, and that's what we usually do. Now, of course, you can create car objects here. Okay, and but for us it will be a mess, especially now. So for now, let's just always create a class, and then if you want to create objects, if you want to deal with it, go to class program. So let's imagine our class program as the actual place where we create objects. Okay.
So I have a question
Sure.
about adding the word public inside the class car
We
when
we
we
will
didn't
talk
add
about yeah we'll talk about
later.
this
Okay.
like yeah like today. Okay, but it
Okay.
will because there are public, private, protected. Okay, so we will go through each meaning of each one, and why should we use one upon another, and when we should use this and not that. Okay,
Okay.
so finally today we will be able to talk about those. Okay, now let's add here. So add a new property called is running. Okay. Of course, what like is running, I mean, is the car is running. Okay. What type of is running do you think should be like?
Boolean.
What's yeah? So it should be a boolean. Okay. And okay, and try of course like is running. Okay, that's fine. So, but I need to start using it in start and stop engine functions. So what should you do inside start engine with is running?
Is running true?
True.
Yeah, so set it to true. Okay, what should you do with it inside stop engine?
Is running false?
Yeah, let's try to do that. So what we are trying to learn here is how do the properties and functions interact together. So we will notice that functions are responsible of either displaying or returning the properties or changing them. Okay, so the functions or the behaviors, they are mostly used to affect the properties most of the time. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so hopefully you were able to do it. So now I will create a new property. So I said it should be Boolean because it's either running or not running. Okay. Now you can set it to false or you can leave it the default. The default of Booleans, as you know, is false. Now, if you are not sure or I know, like for some reason you want to set it, but there's no need for that. Okay. So in the start engine, after you start it, okay, you should hear like the logical thing is that here the is running now is true. And here you can say that is running when you stop the engine is back to false. Okay.
Sorry, Mohammed. I got a question.
Yeah.
So we don't need to use like car dot is running or this dot is running equals true or false. Are we gonna use that or not?
You mean the word this?
Yeah, this dot or
Yeah,
car
we'll
dot.
talk about the word this, but let's like it's a little bit of a detail. So for now, when you are saying is running, of course you are talking about the car that is calling start engine. So like for example, when this Honda starts the engine, so the is running of this Honda is becoming true. Okay, that's why we can use the word this. Okay, but you will notice that it will be grayed out like this because it's not necessary. So whether you write it or not is the same thing. That's why you will see Visual Studio making it like in this light color. It's telling you like you can get rid of it. Okay, but of course, is running here refers to the car that's calling start engine, not like all the cars are running now because you started your car. Okay, so we will talk about when it's mandatory to use the keyword this. Okay, very soon. I think it should be today. But for now, yeah, whether you use this or not, or you don't, is the same. Okay, so we can also create another function that returns. So this is Boolean. Let's call it car engine status. Okay, so this will return is running. Okay, what does that mean? So for example, at any point, okay, at any point, I needed to know, for example, that my Honda dot engine status. Okay, so here I want to, for example, so you can return a Boolean that tells you whether this car's engine is running or not. Okay. Now you can use it in a more meaningful way. So instead of just returning a Boolean, you can say something like, okay, I will just print something and I will show, for example, if is running, then right line, the engine of is currently running. So suppose that, for example, you are trying to shift, okay? So the car needs to know before you shift, is it running or not? So it will call this function, okay? Or it will check that is running, okay? So you can use them in different situations. So it depends on what you want to achieve here. Else, yeah, this here. Right. Okay, so you can use it like the way you want. It depends on what do you want inside your main program. Like, do you want to print stuff? Do you want to return them? Do you want to use it in another class? Okay, but you can do like plenty of things, including, for example, showing debug messages. Okay, so this is like a way to show like debug messages to the user. So for example, the user is not hearing any sound. Okay, so he's not sure, like, is the engine running? Is there a problem? So he will press a button, okay, inside his car, this button called car engine status. And on the screen of the car, he will either see this message or see this message to make sure, like, is it running now or not? Okay, so you can use it in any way you want. Okay, like you can create a function that just prints. You can create a function that returns the boolean. You can return a function that does more complicated things. Okay, the whole idea is that we have functions, we have properties, and functions most of the time will work on those properties. Okay, so here I was able to create a new function, a new feature to my car. Like, I know it's totally useless because you can just hear the engine, but suppose we are talking about some electric car here. Okay, like where you can't hear any noise and you are not sure if this car is running or not for some reason. So you can press this button and you will see either this message or this message. Okay, of course, now we can't create more complicated stuff because we are just starting. Soon we will create like full systems that they feel so much like real life examples. So let's just be patient here. Okay, so is it clear what did I do here? I used the is running just to display some meaningful information for the user. So here we no longer need console.writeLine because this function itself will console.writeLine, like it's inside it. Let's try it here. So you will notice that I started the engine of the 2010 Honda. Then I have this message, the engine of 2010 Honda is currently running. So for example, suppose that I didn't, like this car, the Toyota 1980, I didn't start the engine. And now I want to know the engine status. I just created this car without calling. So you will notice that it should tell you the engine of 1980 Toyota is not running because nobody called start engine, or someone called start engine then called stop engine. Okay, it's one of those two cases. Okay. So we will do this like a million times, I promise, more than a million maybe, throughout the whole class. So we'll create like literally a million objects, and every time we'll create functions, work with them. So don't be afraid if it feels too much. Let's talk about a very quick theoretical thing here. So we are talking about OOP, object-oriented programming. This concept, okay, OOP has 4 principles. Okay, throughout the whole class, we will learn all those principles. But today we are looking at the first principle, which is encapsulation. So what are we doing here? We are encapsulating, okay, or bundling or wrapping all the features the properties, the functions of a type inside a class. Okay, so the main the main purpose, or one of the main purposes of OOB, is to encapsulate everything related to a type inside the class. Okay, so you are wrapping, like, I'm telling you, okay, I have something called MITT. I want to create like a program for it to manage it. So you will say, okay, let's create a class MITT. What do you have inside? So you will start encapsulating everything you have in this new type that you are creating. So you will say in MITT we have courses, we have students, we have classrooms, okay, we have management. So you will start encapsulating everything inside this class that you are creating now. Okay, first you will have everything in one place describing this type, and you will hide it from the outside. Okay, so look at class program. So class program, of course, is totally unaware that there's a class called car, and like every detail in the car. So class program now, okay, after you created the class car, the class program can see that, oh, I can access something called car, but class program doesn't know anything about the details, okay, or the inner details of the class car. It can just use it. Okay, so what I did here, I encapsulated everything related to cars in a different class, and now I'm giving access to other classes, so other classes can start the engine. But do they know how complicated it is to start the engine? They don't. They just know, like, just call this start engine and it will do all the magic. Probably this start engine is maybe 1,000 lines of code. Okay, the class program doesn't care. The details are totally hidden from what, from other classes. So all what they know is you can call the start engine, you can call the stop engine. Okay, but the actual work and all the details and all the heavy calculations and stuff, they are totally encapsulated in the class car, totally hidden from the outside, and you can just use it, like you can notice it yourself. Like when you open your car, when you sit and press the button, do you know what's going inside under the hood? Like millions of operations are going there, but they are totally hidden of you because you don't want to see this complication unless you are the creator of the class, okay, or a mechanic or someone who really wants to go deep. Okay, but as, like, imagine if I told you to use the car, you need to run the engine yourself. Like how complicated that would be if every person needs to learn how to run the engine himself, like, to work with all those cylinders inside. And imagine teaching this to every person. Like that would be impossible. So what did they do? They encapsulated everything in what they call the hood of the car, under the hood, okay, in one place. They give you an interface or a function to press or call. Okay, so now it's even easier than turning a key. Now it's even a button. Okay, so all what you need to do is to press a button that's called start engine, and all the magic will happen. Okay, so they were able to encapsulate all the information, to hide it from you, to make it easier for you, and to make it easier for them. Imagine yourself like playing inside and ruining everything. So it's even safer, okay, in terms of security, that you don't mess up. Like they don't want to give you access. Okay, now of course, like we are assuming that you can't open the hood and work inside. Okay, so the nice thing about OOB is that you can see it all around you. Like it's designed to be able to represent the real life world, okay, or the real world that we live in. So when you create a car, you will say, okay, car properties, functions, that's what they do. You can start it. It feels like you are telling a story. And that's the main purpose of OOP, okay, is to replicate real life inside code. Okay. Now, this is more of a theoretical thing, but what I want you to memorize and know is that OOP has principles. They are four principles. Okay. The first one is called encapsulation. Okay. The meaning of encapsulation, we talked about it, is to wrap and bundle all the shared things in a type, whether they are properties, whether they are function. First, we know that all of them are here. So if I want to fix something, I will come back to class car. I will not need to go to class program to fix something that's related to cars. Okay. Or if I'm talking about classes, like I have a class student and a class teacher. So if there's a matter with teachers, I don't need to open the class student and work there. Okay. And also it's good to hide all the complicated details from the outside. Okay. Hiding is very important because you don't want other people to learn the complications, and maybe you want to them for security reasons. So imagine I told you all the operations related to like bank works and how do they print money and how do they work, and you know there are so many details that I don't even want you to look at or to have access to. Okay, so whether for security, whether for to make things simpler, so many reasons to hide the details. Okay, so the last thing we'll talk about before we go to a quick break is access modifiers. So let me just open a new one so I can show you. Okay, so you can have all the access modifiers here, so we don't need to write them. Or okay, so again, before we talk about access modifiers, the main goal of backend is for you to search yourself. Okay, if you want to learn more about hash sets, dictionaries, if you didn't understand fully, you have Google. Okay, and like maybe I have a resource, but like the resource I have is something that I found. Okay, so you can find instead of one resource, you can find like 1,000 resources. Okay, so everything is there, and please try first to search inside this website, docs.microsoft.com. It's like the official Microsoft um, uh, documentation or manual. Okay, so access modifiers is like sometimes a function is public for everyone. Like start engine should be a public function. Okay, if you don't have access to start engine as the owner of the car, then you can't do really anything. Okay, but imagine I'm talking about the oxygen sensor inside the engine. Okay, this is something that you need to keep private. Okay, it's only something for the engine to use. It's not something that I want every, like I don't want to have a button for users called check oxygen sensor and they press on it all the time. Maybe it's a dangerous thing. Maybe it's something that they don't need. Okay, so some functions are public. Okay, this is the first one. So a public function or a public property is a property or a function that is accessible by anyone, anywhere. Whether you are in the same class, outside this class, maybe another program, okay? Another program that's using your code. So imagine you made your code into a binary, into a library, like a DLL, okay? And like, for example, Sagar made a code, a DLL code, and he gave it to me. So I can, in my code, I can access all the public things he has in his DLL. Okay? Because he made them public. So public is good and also dangerous because you are just given access. So for example, if you have a function called, I know, secret algorithm for calculating salaries, this shouldn't be a public method, okay? Because it's like only for the payroll guys, okay? Or the very specific people who work with salaries. It's not something that you as students or me as a teacher I should be able to see. Okay? So public is for everyone, anywhere, from any like assembly. Assembly means if it's the same, if it's the same program or another program that's using your code. Okay? Private is just the opposite. Private is something that you can access only in the class itself. So let's go back here. So I have cars. Okay. Suppose, for example, I have a property called private engine number. Okay. Suppose that the engine number is something that I don't want everyone to see. It's something for the company so that the company can fix your engine. Sorry, this, for example, says an integer engine number. So this thing can only be seen inside class car, only. Okay, so imagine here, okay, you as a user who created the car and you want to, okay, you change the color, but you also want to see the number, the engine number. Okay, so you won't be able to access it because it's marked as private. Okay, and every time you have a problem like this, the the error message will be extremely obvious. So look at the line, like not the last line, show potential fixes, the line before it. Okay, the line before the last line. It's telling you car dot engine number is inaccessible due to its protection level. Okay, so it's telling you obviously that this field is protected. Okay, it has a level of protection, so you can't access it. Okay, and it happens all the time. Every time you say, hey Mohammed, I created a class and I can't see it. Okay, there's a message. Every time you see it's inaccessible due to, that means it's public private issue. Okay, it's like almost. So here you can't access this one. Okay, like you are not allowed to do so. Suppose, for example, you are a customer in a bank. So the bank has a class called customer, right? Like your name, your birth date, how many cars you have. Like how many cars is maybe public for the employees of the bank. But let's for example talk about your PIN number. Okay, even the employee of the bank can see your PIN number. It's totally private. Okay, it can be seen only inside the class customer. So when you enter the PIN number, it will be validated. But if you went now to a bank and told the employee, okay, can you see my PIN number? He can say, I can change it for you, but I can't see it. I don't have access to see it because it's a private thing. Okay, and that's exactly like, do you remember when I said a few minutes ago, OOB main purpose is to represent real life, okay, in code. So in real life we have public things, we have private things, and this is exactly the meaning of public and private here. Okay, so those two that are the ones that we will be using all the time now. Now, there's something called protected is when we talk about inheritance. So we will learn that a class can inherit from another class. Okay? So a class wheel, for example, can inherit from class car. We will see that. Okay? Or a class student can inherit from the main class person. We will not explain inheritance now, but we are saying we have something called inheritance. Okay? Now, when you inherit a class, you can access everything marked as protected. So sometimes you don't want to make something public for everyone, and you also don't want to make it private for the classes that's inheriting from you. So if there's a class inheriting from me, I everything. Okay? So I can't make it public because now everyone can see it, and I can't make it private because that's only for me. So I can mark it protected. So protected is accessible by you and any class that inherits from you. Okay? By you, I mean you are a class. Okay? So protected is accessible by a class itself and any other class that inherits from this one. Now let's leave inheritance, but let's just keep in mind that there's something called protected. Okay? If a member is protected, then it can be accessed only by the same class or in a class that is derived or inherited from this class. Okay? Now, internal. Okay, now take a look here. Do you see this namespace? Okay. So, like, so far we didn't talk about namespaces, but when you have a set of classes, okay, let's say like 50 classes, they are in the same namespace, under the same namespace, we call those like an assembly of classes, especially when we convert them to a DLL. Okay, so internal, for example, if you have an internal class, okay, then it's accessed by all the classes that are in the same assembly, in the same namespace. Okay. For example, if you created another namespace now, okay, it won't be able to see the internal things. Like then the word internal itself, okay. For example, imagine the namespace as a building. Okay. So the elevator is an internal thing to the building, right? So every family or every apartment in the building is a class, and they are all have access to this internal thing. But someone in another assembly, another group of classes, okay, another building, can they access our elevator? They can't. Okay, so classes by default, classes are internal. So here it's like you are saying internal class, or you can make the class itself public. Okay, so public means now it can be accessed by anyone from any assembly, from any group of classes. Okay, so we will talk more about namespace and assembly and what is the difference between this and this. But now, for now, let's say that a namespace is a group of classes. They are under the same umbrella. Okay, so now class car is in this namespace. Class program is also in the same namespace. So they are internal to each other. Okay, they live in the same namespace. Okay, in the same assembly. So class program was able to see the class car because they are like this one was default, was internal. Okay, and they are in the same assembly, so they access. Now, if you have another namespace, it won't be able to see class car because class car is not public. If you want other classes from another assembly, another namespace to access this class car, you need to mark it as public. Otherwise, they won't be able to see. Okay? For now, all our projects will be in one namespace, so we will not use the word internal. Okay, like for next 2 months maybe. Okay, protected internal is, protected and internal, private protected. So I really didn't have any situation in 10 years where I needed to use private protected, but it's there. In some situations you need it. Okay, so those are, just keep them in mind that they are there. Okay, but what we focus mostly about are the first two. Okay, when we work with inheritance, we care too much about protected. Okay, when we work with multiple projects, each project is a namespace. Okay, so for example, now if you went here to yours, like I have one project now. Okay, now if you added a new project, add project. Okay, the new project will be what? Will be another namespace. Okay, so the new project won't be able to deal with class car. Like the new project won't be able to access class car in the first project. Why? Because they are different namespaces and this one is not public. Okay, so we care about internal when we create multiple projects usually. Okay, protected internal is the same assembly or from another assembly that derive from it.
Mohammed,
Private, yeah,
just a quick question.
sure.
Can you go back to the code? So if you make a new project and then later on you change the namespace to be the same, will it be able to then access all of the public classes within the namespace?
Well, if they are public, then you can access them, whether you change the namespace or whether
right.
you didn't.
Okay.
If they are public, you can. But of course, if
Say
another
like we change
code,
the namespace afterwards to the same, then we can change it to have access later, right?
Well, you can change the namespace, but you need to be careful. Like some other namespace may be hard coded this name, so
Right,
it won't.
and then that'll cause conflict.
Yeah, it will tell you like I can't recognize this anywhere. Now we are lucky we are working with Visual Studio, because Visual Studio will be able to, like in one click, you can tell Visual Studio, okay, can you refactor this name, change it anywhere, and it will do it for you.
Oh, it does. So if you change namespace in the line there, it'll change it everywhere?
Yeah, in everyone who is using the namespace somewhere else.
Okay.
Like in
Okay,
another project. Okay, but of course in the same project. Okay, in the same window. Suppose that instead of car, I changed this to my car. Okay, now you will notice that all of this code now is broken.
Yeah.
So it's the same story when you change any name. It's not like a special case for namespaces. When you change anything, you will notice that your old code is broken. So here, like rename car to my car, and you will notice that it changed all of the broken code to the new name. And same thing you can do with namespace. But of course, if you kept the old name, this is a broken code. It won't work. Okay, let's make it. Okay.
Oh, thanks.
But maybe you are not working with an IDE as good as Visual Studio, so you need to be care about changing the names of things. Tomorrow, if you move to another language, another IDE, okay, like most modern IDEs, they have this feature, but you can't guarantee that all the time. Okay, is that what you were asking about?
Yeah, that was all, Mohammed. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. Now, this is something I always say. Try always to learn more and more about Visual Studio. It will make your life way much easier. Like every year, or even with every group, I learn something new about Visual Studio. I didn't know that I can do this, or it was there. It can do like extremely crazy stuff, like especially with testing, with servers, with databases. It can really make your life much easier. So the more you learn about Visual Studio, for example, you have search, Control F, you can search for a word. But what if you want to search for like all the files, all the classes, you can Control Shift F. Okay, like this is something I use all the time. I can't live without this. Like sometimes I need to look for a string, like in everywhere. Okay, so Control Shift F, for example, it will be able to search the entire solution or just the current project. You can match the case, like C capital then AR. Okay, you can write regular expressions. So it's really a very extreme, like very powerful tool. Okay, so that's for access modifiers. For now, let's keep in mind like public and private. Okay, that's what we need to know for sure. Okay, now if you didn't specify anything, that's when we have what we call the default access modifier. So for example, I didn't say anything about the class. So the default access modifier for classes is internal. Of course, you can't create private class. There's no private class in C#. Okay. Now, if you didn't say anything about a field or a member inside the class, then the default will be what? The default will be private. Okay. So in C# in general, the default access modifier is the least accessible one. So what is the least accessible modifier inside a class? It's the private thing. Okay, there's nothing more strict than private. So private is the default one. What is the least accessible thing in class? So classes can be public or can be internal. Okay, so by default, they will not be public for everyone because it's a very dangerous thing. So by default, they make it the least accessible thing. So they can protect you from, like, if you forgot to say anything, they won't make it public by default for you because maybe this is something is not public. Okay. So, of course, there is interfaces and like the complications of interfaces. So we'll not talk about them now. But let's just say the default for classes is internal. The default for members inside the class is private, if you didn't specify any modifier. Okay? Any question regarding public and private and the default ones? Okay.
So sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry, Mohammed.
sure.
One question. So when you set the modifier of private, so which means you can only use it in that class, right?
Yeah, what I said is you can't say private class in C#. Like there's nothing as private class.
Oh no. I mean like the private engine number. So you can only use this one inside this car class, right?
Yeah. Or if you didn't say anything, like you see string make, I didn't say anything. I didn't say it's private or public. So it will be what?
Private.
It will be private, just like the engine number. And I can only use it where?
The car class.
Inside the car class. Just so see here. Now I'm having lots of errors. It's telling me like car is inaccessible. Car.make, the make is inaccessible. Okay, because it's what? It's private. Okay, so any other class can't see the private things of a class. Okay, you can use it only inside here. So private, to make a field private, either say private or don't say anything. Okay. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So is this what you were asking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now let's make it public again so everyone can see it. Okay.
Will we be talking about static and?
Oh, that's like just like a whole class. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. You were in a hurry. Sorry. What's? Okay,
I don't know. I was
Yeah.
looking at the private protected, and when I was looking at it, the explanation said something about static. So I'm like, yeah.
Oh yeah, well that's the nice thing about Microsoft Documents. They always start with the general thing, then they go too deep. Like sometimes, like even with list or hash set, I really don't know what's at the end of the page. Like at the end of the page, they go into too much detail. Static is a very an extremely like important thing, so you will always see it in every document. We will talk about it soon, but it needs its own class. Okay. The nice thing about Microsoft Documents too is that at the end you have this see also. So they will show you stuff that is somehow related to what you are reading. Okay. So you can spend hours here without getting bored. Chaya is laughing because she got bored already. Okay. So it's not very entertaining. It's not like watching TikTok and like teenagers dancing like crazy people, but it's entertaining because you are learning. Okay. So let's go for a quick break. Okay, 15 minutes, and then we'll come back to continue what we're learning about classes. Okay. Yeah. See you soon.
See you.
But if you are using the same word, then the keyword this is mandatory because your code doesn't know what you're talking about unless you specify, okay, this dot make, which is this value, equals to make, which is this value. Okay, so this, you will notice that it's in blue because it's a keyword, okay, in C#, and it refers to the object that you are working on now. Okay, it refers to the actual object. Okay, so here when I say my Honda.car status or my Honda start engine, so what is the this here? It's the object that calling this function. So that this inside the class will be my Honda. While when this car is changing its color, its make, so what is the this now in this code? It's this car. Okay, so it refers to the object who is doing the work. Okay, the object who is calling the make, the color, the functions. Okay, so constructors, they have lots of other advanced details that we will like see in each class. Okay, in each class, sometimes when we talk something, we will add to our knowledge about constructors, but those are the main things. Okay, so if anyone told you like what is the constructor, it's the function, okay, that's used to construct and to initialize the values of a class. Okay, it has the same name, no return type, okay, and it will be called automatically. You don't call it yourself manually. Okay. Okay. Now you may say, okay, if I removed all of those, okay, my code will remain working. So, but I don't have a constructor. How was I able to construct cars without having a constructor? Do you remember, like few minutes ago, we didn't have any constructor, right? But we were able to create cars. So in C#, if you didn't create any constructor, there is a default hidden constructor that looks like exactly like this one. So see this default that doesn't do anything and that doesn't take anything. If you don't have any constructors, okay, it will be written by default and hidden, because otherwise you won't be able to make any cars, right? Okay, so if you don't have any constructors, then you have a default hidden empty constructor written for you that you can use without even noticing. Okay. Okay. Now, if I wrote any constructor Okay, suppose that I removed like this one and this one. Okay, now like my code has only one constructor that I wrote. So when you write a constructor yourself, you are disabling that empty default constructor that you have by default. Okay, so this is extremely important because that default hidden and empty constructor, it won't remain active if you wrote a constructor yourself. It will be disabled or just consider it like now removed. Okay, that's why if you need that default empty one, you need to write it yourself. Okay, so by default, if you don't have any constructor, you have a hidden one that's empty. But when you write any kind of constructor, anyone that takes an argument or a million arguments, okay, you will be disabling that default constructor. So if you need it, you need to write it yourself. And that's everything for the basic constructors. Now, all of this knowledge is not a secret. All of this knowledge, you can go online, C# constructors. Okay, just those two magic words on Google, you will see everything related to C# constructors in many blogs, in many tutorials, in videos. They will tell you the same thing I'm telling you now. Of course, they may tell you less or more. Now, my job is to tell you what's enough for you now, okay? And so we can go. And I don't need to tell you more things that will make you confused. Lots of knowledge depends on other topics, so we can't go very deep in constructors unless we study other things. Okay, any question about constructors? Okay. So suppose that we added, the last thing we will talk about very briefly now. Suppose that we added like something, property called integer max speed. Okay. Now, of course, the naming convention of C#, if it's a public thing, a public member, it starts with a capital letter. Okay. So now this will be make. Of course, it's not like true or false or correct and wrong. Okay, but it's like a way of how C# works usually. I have to change all of those now. Okay. Okay. Just keep it in mind that usually if it's public, it starts with a capital letter, just as a standard. Okay. So suppose that I have something called max speed. You know, each car has a max speed, right? So it can be 200, 240. Okay. So I can get this value. So I can say something like, for example, at a later point somewhere in my program, I can say console.writeLine my Honda.max speed. And it will display the max speed, whatever it's initialized to, right? So here we are doing something we called get. So I'm getting the max speed. Okay, I want to get it to display it for the user, to do anything with it, right? Now, if you want to give a value, so you can say my Honda.max speed equals 240. This is what we call a set function. So I am setting the max speed. So when you are reading the value, this is called get. When you are setting the value, this is called what? Set. Okay. So in every member, okay, in every property or every field, like all of those, okay, there are two things to do: either to get this value or to set it, right? And get and set are what we call the properties. So by default, they will be written by default for you. So for example, when you say public int max speed, so there is a get function that will get it for you, and there is a set function by default that will set it for you. Okay, but you can also write them yourself. So you can say that the engine number, okay, like is a private thing, right? But what if I want to set it or get it? Okay, so we can like properties, of course, are mostly for private fields, because if it's public, then you don't need to write anything else, right? You can just get it and set it because it's public. But sometimes, like, you may say, okay, this is private, but I can make the get and set under few conditions. So you can write something like public int engine number, okay, return engine number. Okay. Okay, so now you created what? You created a function that returns the engine number. Okay, of course you may say, okay, so what's the point here? Why didn't you create this one public? Okay, and when you created public, then like people can get it. The thing is, if you made it public, everyone will be able to get it. But here, when you create a function to get it, here you can say, for example, check permissions. Okay, like the person who is setting, is he an administrator? Okay, or maybe check time. Do you know, like, if you try to log into your CRA account now for taxation, it won't work after 2 a.m., I guess. Okay, like you can get your CRA information, but there is a restriction. So it's not totally public, like you can just get it anytime. It's public, but with conditions. Okay, so if you want to make something private, okay, and you want to give get and set functions to it, but under conditions, okay, so for example, you can write another function here, public int, or let's say void set engine number. Okay, so here you can say, and here you will be sending what? Int is called value. Okay, so you will say this engine number equals the value that I will send. But of course, before it, you can maybe also check permissions. Okay, check like if it's like some good time, or for example, what if I want to create a function, public void, let's say set max speed. So maybe I don't want to give permissions, but I want to check the max speed. So imagine someone setting the max speed of a car to 3,000. Like this is not allowed. I don't want to, like here, see max speed. Okay, without any functions, and if it's totally public, then you can just say like it's the max speed is 3,000, 30,000. See, like there's no restriction. It's very dangerous, right? So if you want to give the set functionalities, but you want to keep what? You want to keep some restrictions, that's when you can make it, okay, don't make it public so everyone can just write whatever they want. Make it private, okay? It's private now. You can still set it, right? But under my conditions. So I can say if the value you are trying to send is bigger than 240, then for example, return error. Okay, like I can't have more than 240. Else, for example, else is a good value. Okay, so it's bigger than 240, and let's say value is smaller than 0, like the max speed is minus, okay, which is impossible. I will return error. Otherwise, what should I do? I will say, okay, now that's fine. Now I can give you access to my max speed. Max speed equals what? The value that you sent to me after I verified what you are setting. Okay, let's make it just a small letter here. Okay. And of course, a set without a get doesn't make any, like you will notice that Visual Studio is trying to tell you that this one is private, so try to use it. Okay. But anyways, like when you make things public again, then you are giving ultimate access to everyone, and they can get it anytime, anywhere, and they can set any value they want. Okay. Now, if you want to make some restrictions, so you can get the engine number. Okay, let's call this get. Sorry. So you can get the engine number, but in certain times, in certain permissions. Okay, that's fine. You can set the max speed, but you need to be careful. Like you are not setting by mistake. You are sending like 30,000 or big numbers or negative numbers. Okay. Now, in Java, that's what they do. In Java, not JavaScript. They like to write everything as private, like private make, private year, private color, and make get and set functions to each one of them. Okay. Now in C#, they said, okay, since people like properties very much, so why don't we just create a special keyword for it? So instead of you, like, see what we did here. I made the max speed, or I made the engine number, I made it private, right? So I will create a function called get engine number and a function called set engine number. That's what they mostly do in Java. Okay, so in C# they said, okay, since people will create get function, set function for everyone, why don't we make it a little bit easier for them so they can control get and set instead of creating a function for each one? So they said, okay, when you write a private field, let's say, let's create another year. Let's control the year. Okay, so we can make the year private. Okay, and then we can create a property. Okay, we can make public. Usually it's the same name as the private thing, but with a capital letter. So you may say int year. So the private thing will be called year with small letter. It's like a standard. And the public thing will be called year with a capital letter. Okay. So, and then what do? Here inside it, you can write get function, and you can write also a set function. Okay, so instead of having a separate function called get something, then a separate function, they said, okay, why don't we make it easier by creating what we call getters and setters, which will do the same thing as those guys, this one, this one, this one. Okay, but it will look more, more readable. So when you want to get the year, do you want to have any restrictions? Do you want to have any permissions? Okay, here, like any permissions or conditions before returning the year. Okay, you write them here in the get section. Then eventually, what should you do? Return what? The year. Okay, so the get, instead of writing the word get year, okay, I will write just the word get, which will be colored in blue because it's a keyword, and it will return what? The year. Okay, set is for setting. So here, for example, I can say also any conditions or permissions. Okay, for example, when you want to set the year of a car, then of course it shouldn't be before 1900s. Okay, that's before any cars were made, and it shouldn't be more than like now, okay, or a year from now, whatever. But here, for example, if, okay, you will say, okay, what's the parameter I'm sending? Do you remember here when we were setting max speed, we used the parameter that we called value, right? Okay, so where's the parameter here that you are setting? Okay, so you can use the keyword value. So value, okay, you will notice that it's also colored in blue because it's a keyword in C#. So value means whatever you are trying to set. Okay, so it's the argument you are trying to set. Okay, without the need to pass it as argument like we did here. So you will say if the value is smaller or bigger than 1900, then what? Then it's fine. Okay, then year equals value, the one that you are sending. Otherwise, you can leave it blank. Otherwise, it won't be set. Okay, so all the purpose of properties is to replace those kind of functions that people were used to write all the time. So it's just to make things simpler. So instead of writing a whole function for get, a whole function for set, they invented this way, okay, to get and set with conditions, with restrictions, okay, with validation. Okay, and of course, it doesn't make sense to have the year public as well, because if the year is public, then okay, why are you creating conditions? Now everyone can access it without any restrictions. So the correct thing to do is to set your member or your field to private and to create what? A property for it. Get property and set property. And here you put all the conditions. Now, if you don't have any conditions, you can create empty get and set like this. For example, the make. The make is something what? Okay, the make is something private, but I don't have any restrictions. So I can say something like, okay, I can say something like public string. We said it's the same name, but with capital letter. I can say something like this, get and set, like it's empty. Like for now, I don't. In the future, maybe if you want to add restrictions, you can add them. But this is totally equal to not having anything. So empty get and set is total to like not having them. Okay, and it's equal to making the whole thing public. Okay, so properties in C# are a way to get the variable or the member and to set the member. And we mostly write them if we want to add conditions. Okay, and for example, conditions or permissions. Now, if you don't want, you can keep them empty, or you can just make like, make, for example, it's using empty properties, so you can make it public anyway. It won't matter because you don't have any conditions or restrictions or anything. Okay, but many people, they like to make it private anyway, and they like to create a property. They like to create a property that's totally empty. Maybe in the future, they will write get and set.
So
Okay.
syntax wise, get always comes before set.
Honestly, like I've never tried to, but it's like I don't know. It shouldn't matter. Let's see. What happened? Just by trying, I destroyed it shouldn't matter. Like it's just the order. But I've never tried of replacing the order. Like we always say get and set, get and set. You know, but it's like it doesn't matter as long as the code inside is the code of set and get. Okay, because you are using the word itself. And set, okay, set uses something called value, because when you are setting something, then of course you are sending the value to it. Okay, like so they said, okay, why do we need to write something like this int value all the time? Okay, let's just make it value.
And Mohammed, that
Yeah.
set method in that value, and the value can be integer, boolean, or any data
No,
type
it
as
should
well.
be, well, you don't say what is the type, but it of course should be from the same time. Like you can set boolean to integer. So you don't say what is the type, but of course you should say like year here. Like I can say my Honda.year equals true. Okay, it won't make any sense. Let me just fix the million problem here. See, so here my Honda.year, I'm using the property. I'm using the set property. So what is the value I'm sending? 2000 and what? 10. Now this one will be validated against this code. Is the value you are sending bigger than this one? Yeah, okay, that's fine. If you try to send the wrong value, it won't be taken. Okay, it's like you didn't write anything. Okay, now let's write the property for max speed. So max speed is private. So let's remove the old way and let's use the modern way to write the max speed. So I have a private value or a private member called max speed, right? So to make it available for people, what should I do? I need to create a public, it's integer, right? Integer. And we use usually the same name, but with capital letter. Okay. The get, okay, I want the get to be empty and just return max speed. Okay, like whenever whomever asks for max speed, I want to return it. What about the set? Like for example, the set, I want to set some restrictions here. So if the value is less than 240, less or equals than 240, and the value is bigger than 0, okay, then that's fine. Then the max speed, the private thing, okay, be careful here inside the properties, we only use the private thing. Then the max speed, the private, I will allow you to set it, equals the value that you will send. Otherwise, I want to accept it. Otherwise you can return an exception. Okay, you can crash your program. So the people who are trying to send a wrong value, they can notice that, oh, we are sending the wrong value. And you will notice that now I can use it in my code. Let's fix those. Okay. And that's what we call properties, and that's what we call get and set. Okay, so a private field, a public property. Okay. Now, if you don't have any conditions, anything, just make the private field, just make it public. It will be the same story. Okay, any question? Yep.
What is the keyword value? Is it a default keyword?
Yeah, it's a default keyword. You can use it only inside the set.
Okay, so it's like a powder. So we just ignore.
Yeah, it's like, you know, when you are setting, then of course you are setting to a value, right? So that's it. This one is the value. Like you are saying, make equals something, year equals something. So this something is the value. Like here, you can't use the word value inside the get or inside anything else. It's only for the set.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's what you are sending as a value to the year, for example, here. Okay, it's the thing after the equals. Like I can't explain more than that. Okay. Any other question?
Just again, I'm just confused about that value. I understand it is the keyword and we use it in the set method. And regarding this on line 36, it is an integer method, and that's why that value reflect to that integer. Let's say in the future, if it is a Boolean method, yes, true or false. So that value can be used in respect to that Boolean as well.
Well, it will use what's inside, like what's inside the property. So the value inside the property year is different than the value inside the property max speed. It will be matching to what's, like, it will be inside the property, right? So it will be matching to the type of the property.
Right.
Why are you concerned about the type? Like max speed value is what?
Integer.
Yeah, so the value should be integer. Why are you concerned? What is the?
Because value, as you mentioned, it is the keyword, and that
Yeah, it's just a keyword. You will send a value, okay? So the type of this value, like this code here, it won't allow you to send the wrong type anyway. Like, okay, Mazda.year equals true. Like before going up, this code won't allow you to continue. It will tell you, like, I'm a year, I need an integer. Okay, so send me a value of integer. Okay, and this, whatever you write be after the equals mark, okay, this will be the value.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
So don't think about the type. It's the type of the thing you are trying to set. Okay. Any other question? Okay. So I think we went 10 minutes over the time. Okay. So let's meet again at 12:40. Okay. So 12:40 we'll continue our class. Okay. Yeah. And if you have any question, of course, like Okay. So since we can't wait until you are done, is the first time. So let's go through the answer step by step. Okay. So what we want to create a class called student that has those three properties. So just like before the class program or anywhere that is possible to write, you can create your class. Okay. And you can create, now you can make the name, for example, as an empty property, okay, which is equals to making it just only public. Or if you think you need to make it private and then create the set and get, that's also fine. So it really depends on what you want here. Okay. Now the best way would be to make it private, then create getter and setter. Okay. But that would take a lot of time from us every time we want to do it. So I will try to always create it this way. Okay. Make it public property with empty get and set, unless we want to make something different. Okay. But of course, it's not a good practice to make everything public all the time. Okay. It's just here because it will really take half of the class just writing private and writing getters and setters. We also have the nationality. Okay. We also have the string, or we can have date time. So date time is a special class for dates and times. Okay. Because working with date times is extremely important. So in C# they created a class just for dates and times. Now, if you want to make it a string, that's also fine. Okay. But date time is an extremely powerful one. For example, it works with years and months and calculate times, and it can go back in time. So it's a time machine. Okay. Rather than just using a simple string. Okay. Those are the student things. Now we said we want constructors. Okay. Constructor is a special function. It has the same name. Okay. Same name of the class student. We said the first one will be used, the first constructor will be used to initialize just the name. So I will send string just name. Okay. And I can say this dot name. Of course, the usage of this is not mandatory here. So you will see that it's grayed out, but I like to write it inside constructors anyway. Okay. This is the constructor if you only know the name. Now, what if you know everything about the student while you are trying to create it? That's when you can use this second constructor. So this one has string name, string nationality, string and date time. Let's say birth date. And I will set everything from those to what, like the name of the student you are making with new will equal to the name you send in the constructor. The name of the or the nationality is dot. The nationality of this student will equal to the nationality you send as an argument. Also, birth date equals to the argument that you send as a birth date. Now you can create students in two ways, either by knowing their name. So you can say new student and send the name, or by knowing everything about them. So you can say new student and send name, nationality, and birth date. Now, do I have an empty default constructor now? Why? Like I have it by default in the beginning, but since we created our own constructor, we disabled that default empty constructor. So now you can't create a student without sending anything. Like you can't say student equals new student. It won't work because you don't have a constructor that takes nothing. Okay. Okay.
Excuse me, my
Yeah.
man. So I just got another question. So as you said before, like this for like this that word this the color is different, right? It means it can be put there or you
Yeah, it
cannot
can be
also.
removed. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we don't necessarily use
No,
that this.
no. It,
Okay.
it's only necessary if the argument name is exactly the same as the property name.
Oh,
That,
okay.
that's when it becomes necessary.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise, it's any different, then it's not necessary.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I have a
Okay.
question. So it's good idea to create a default constructor too. As
Is
we,
what?
it's good idea to create a default
Yeah,
constructor
it's a good
like
idea. Yeah.
MT1.
Yeah, and in sometimes with inheritance, it's mandatory in some cases. So it's a good idea to have an empty one, but like it will just be there sitting for like usually when we are working with inheritance and there are some rules when you need to have it, but for now it's just like empty. This is if you are trying to create a new record for a student, but the student is coming later, so you don't know the student name or you don't know anything about him. You are just creating an object of student without any information about him. Okay, so that's the student class for the first question. Okay, those. Now create another class called course. Now course has name, duration, and credits. Okay, that's easy. Let's create a class, of course, outside class student. Don't create a class inside the class. Okay. This is the class course. Okay, what do I have? I have the course name, public string name. Okay, let's make it get and set just like this. And I also have name and we say duration. So it's how many months. Okay, so duration, okay, which is an integer. And also an integer, which is number of credits. Okay, like how many credits? Let's call it num of credits. Okay. What? Okay. So this is the class course. Okay, that's fine. What else? Now I created those. Okay. Now in the class student, now I'm saying that I want to create a list of courses. So you see student, student has some stuff like a string, a date time, maybe an integer. It also can have stuff from other classes. So a student can have something from class car. A student can have something from class course. So here I can also create something like can say public. So you can say that the student has one course, but the student actually in real life has what? Has a list of, is it integer? Is it string? A list of what? A list of courses. So see, I'm using a class inside another class. So here we can say it list of courses or courses. You can name it courses or list of courses. Okay. So see now, my student at MITT, name, nationality, birthday, and a list of courses. Okay, you may say, okay, what is a course? In C#, there's nothing called course. So course is a class that we created ourselves. So inside the list, we used to create a list of integers, right? A list of strings. We said it can be a list of anything. So it can be a list of a class that we created ourselves. Okay, is that clear? Okay. So, and of course, it's a list of course. So each course in your list has what? Has a name, has a duration. Okay, because it's an object from what? from this. Okay, we did that. Okay, in a student, we have the property called list of courses or courses. Okay, we did that. Now, in the student class, write two functions, join course and leave course. Okay, in the student class, go to the student class. So, public. So, when you join a course, do you return anything from it? You don't. Okay, it's just a void. Okay, you are just joining a course. So, in the class student, I have a function called join course. Okay, what do you need to know to join the course? Like if I told you, okay, go join a course, what's the first question you will ask me?
First name.
What is the course?
The course, the
Right.
object
Okay.
course you need.
Okay, so when you want to join a course, you need what? You need a course to join, right? Just common sense. So the argument to this function is what? Is a course to join. Okay, this is the course you want to join. Okay, how do you join in our simple example? How do I say, okay, this student want to join to this course? What do you need to change? Do you need to change the student name?
Add the list. This
You
of
need to
course.
change what? The list of courses of this student, right?
Yeah.
So you will say list of courses for a student, for a certain student, of course, dot what? Add. What do you want to add?
Course to join.
The course you want to join, right? So the course you send to the argument. Course to join. Okay. And it's very simple system. So for us, this is how we join a course. Now Saria said, okay, we need to check if the course is not already there. Let's leave this for a later point. Okay, just to make it as simple as possible. Okay. How do I unjoin a course or leave a course?
List of
Remove.
course dot remove.
So of course you need to what? To know the course you want to leave, right? Course to leave. And I will need to alter what? The list of courses of this student dot remove what? Remove this kind. Now there are so many checks here. You need to check if it's already there, if not, if you already left, then there's no point. But let's make it as simple as possible again. Okay. So now what am I doing? I created a student. I created now the functions that control this student. So a function, for example, to join a course, to leave a course, to maybe I have a function now to, for example, get the name of the student, the full name, like first name and last name. Okay. I have a function to know if this student is domestic or international. So I can write all the functions that matter students inside what? Encapsulate them inside class student. Now, this is a two-way road. So you can delete those functions and actually write a function in the course called add student to course here inside this one. So you will add a student to the course. But for now, let's keep it as the question wants. Okay, so the question wants us to create a class student and create a function join course that will take a course. Okay, and what? It will add you to that course. Then it will do the leave course just as the same. Okay, so before we make this one, let's test our code. So we created the classes, the abstract thing, the definition. Now it's time to create actual students and actual courses. Okay, so let's create a student. Student, okay, let's call him Mike. This is the name of the whole object. Equals new student. So I know I want to use the constructor that uses only the name for now, for this one. Okay, so now I want to use a constructor that only takes the name. So now I have a student, a real student called Mike. So now I can say Mike dot join course, but I can't do this yet. I need to create a course. So let's create a course. Let's create this one called math course equals new what? New course. Now I don't have any constructor in the course. I didn't create them. So I need to initialize them what? Like math one by one. Math course dot name equals like math course dot see why constructors are very convenient, because you don't need to do that. The duration is 6 months. Math course dot credits, like 3 credits. Okay, so I have a student and I have a course. How can I add Mike to the to this course? I can say Mike dot join course. Okay, what do you need to pass to join course? Do you remember what we said? You need to pass a course that you want to join. So what should I pass here?
Math course.
The name of the course object. What is the name of the course object? Math course. Okay, and that's how we invoked the join course. And now let's have a function in student. Okay, now let's create a function in student that displays all the names of the courses you have to help us to see. Okay, public, this is also void, it will just print course list of a single student, of course. Okay, it doesn't need to take anything as argument. Okay, so for each what in list, like where are your courses as a student? In here. So for each course in this list, what should you do? Just type the name. Okay, so this is what? It's a list. Okay, so to iterate over a list, what do we use? For each. Okay, so for each course in list of courses, in your list of courses, just console.writeLine something like the course dot name. Okay, and before that you can say something like the let's see, the list of courses for the student, and then we insert the name. Okay, what should I replace this 0 here with? What?
Name.
With the name of the student, right? So it will show the list of courses for the student Mike, or for the student Chris. Okay, so name. Okay, then it will show you the names one by one. Okay, so now I created a math course. Let's create another course. Okay, let's call programming. Okay, let's call it programming course, so you know exactly this course. New course, programming course dot name equals what? Let's call it introduction to programming. Okay, that's the name of the course. Okay, that's the name of the property. This is the name of the whole object. Okay, just don't mix them up. Okay, this is the name of the object. Okay, the whole object. This is the value of the property that's called name inside the object. So the object itself has so many things. Has name, has credits. Okay, this is the name of the whole object. Okay, how can I add Mike? Mike dot add or join course, right? Just pass it to the join course. Okay, I added Mike to the course. Okay, now let's say Mike dot print. So you will notice that I can access every function just by using the name of the object. So the name of the object of the student is called what? Mike, or let's call it student one. Okay, so you know for sure that the name is a different than the name of the object. So student one, you can student one join course. Student one joined another course. Then student one, I want him to print the list of courses. Let's see now. Oh yeah, that's a null exception. Okay. Yeah. So this one is the list itself needs to be new, or the list will be null. Okay, it will complain about the list being null. Okay, so you will notice that the list of courses for the student Mike are math and introduction to programming. Okay, and of course you can leave a course just the same way. If you ever had a null reference exception, then you are missing a new somewhere. So the list of courses needs to be new list of courses. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. Okay. Now, this needs to sink in, needs time. So the best way to do it is to rewrite the whole thing yourself. Read it very slowly and try to understand it and absorb it. Okay? Now, if you understood every step, that's fine. But when you look at everything, it feels like a lot. That's why you need to go back and study yourself. Okay? Okay, now we need to change the student class so the student can only have 15 credits. That means when you join a course, okay, you need to check how many credits the student already has. Like if this student has only 9 credits, then that's fine. He can join this course. But if this student has already signed up for 15 credits and he is trying to sign up more, that's when we need to say, oh, so you can't join this course, sorry, because you already exceeded the maximum amount of allowed courses. Okay, let's try to do that. Of course, this has something to do with mainly the join course. Like we need to change this function. Okay, so when you are joining a course, you need to see how many credits this student already has in his list. And if joining this course will make them above the maximum, or if it's still allowed.
Sorry, what you said?
This is this question.
Okay.
So when you join a course, you need like you can't allow people to join unlimited number. You need to make sure they only have 15 credits at a time.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I finished this.
Okay. Okay, can you show us your solution?
My solution, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You can share now.
Well, this is my solution. So I first of all I review I summarize the credit of
Mhm.
all courses that I have,
Nice.
and then I ask if the summarize of those credits of those course credit plus the
Mhm.
new
Yep.
course credit is equal is less or equal than 15. So if
Yep.
it's true, I add it.
Yeah.
Of
Well,
course.
that's perfect. Okay, so you see what Willie did here? He calculated full credits. In what he means, how many credits the student already has. So how do you know how many credits the student already has? By going with a for each through all courses, okay, and like calculating the sum of all the credits, right? So in the if, Will is saying if my current credits, let's say 13, plus the credits I want to join, okay, are still less or equal to the maximum, then add. Here, just what's remained, Willie, is like the else. You can have the else to print a message, error message to the user. Otherwise, the user may think that he joined. Okay. So after the if, you can say, after the if, you can say another else, and you can say like error message or maybe throw an exception, okay, or whatever, just so the user can know, okay, that he or she wasn't able to join. Otherwise, they will think that they joined. Okay, so you can't add this course. Okay, so let me write down exactly what Willie did, and then we will try to enhance it. We will notice that we are doing a lot of repeated thing with these codes. So, but let's make it this way first, then we can enhance it. So join course. So now I can no longer just add any course. I need to check. So as Willie said, like let's call it current number of credits is like how many credits you have so far. Okay. And then we need a for each var course in your courses. Okay. I just need to calculate the current number of credits. Okay. The course dot. How do you know the credits of each course? How can I know that? Like from
First, the
course
Going into
number
the
of
credit.
credits.
course dot number of credits. It's inside. Sorry, it's inside the course itself. Okay, it's inside the course itself. Okay, now I need an if statement. So if my current number of credits, if I added to it, if I added the credits of the course I want to join, does it remain smaller or equals to the maximum, which is 15? Does it remain? Okay, if the answer is yes, then okay, add it as usual. Add it to me. Okay, if the answer is no, like I will exceed my allowed number of credits, so what should I do here? I should say something like um, you you can't join this course, you can't join this course due to exceeding the allowed number of courses, okay, of credits, or whatever you want. Okay, any error message should be fine. Okay.
I show the current number of credits in that error message just to show the user how much.
Yeah, you can show
That
like
would be nice.
or you can say you already have, and then credits. Okay, you can't join this course. Okay, and instead of the 0, we will say what? The current number of credits. So I will show the user, oh, you already have 14 credits. You can't join anymore. Okay, so you can make any kind of customization you want. Okay, and when you leave a course, do you need to adjust? Like, do you need to do anything when you leave a course? For now, for this code, you don't. Okay, because every time we are calculating the number of credits, we are not storing the number of credits in a variable. Okay. Okay. So now when you keep joining courses, you will stop when you will exceed 15 credits. Okay, any question? Okay, so the homework that we have, I want to make another property in student. Okay, now this right here. Make current credits a field. So I want, now, you know, the student has name, nationality. It will also have something called current credits. And I want to keep track of all the credits. So I don't want to calculate the number of credits every time. Like every time I need to know how many number of credits you have, I need to do a for each and go step by step. I don't want to do that. I want to keep a value, a field called current number of credits, okay, all the time with the student. So the student can access it every time or from any time, anywhere, okay, without the need to recalculate it each time. So I want to make it a field, and of course I need to change the code in join course and leave course. So when you leave a course, your current credits should go what? Go down. When you join a course, your current number of credits should go up. And of course, this rule is still mandatory, that the maximum number is 15.
For this, is this properties or attribute can be private, right? Because
anything can be private, but you need to.
I mean, like, for this requirement specifically.
Current, no, maybe the student wants to know his current, like maybe everyone wants to know how many credits do you want. So let's keep it public. It's not a secret. Okay, like the employees, they want to know, you want to know, maybe the managers want to know. Okay, like how many credits do you have? Your parents, maybe they want to have access. Okay, so let's keep it public. So all what I want to do is to create a new field with those 4 called current credits and keep tracking and keep updating it every time I join or leave. So to make it always up to date and available. Okay. So any question before we end? Okay, so that was our introduction to OOP, and we learned a lot of things: classes, objects. We learned how to make them. We learned about constructors, properties,